Hey everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm 𝗂𝘁, and we're looking to have a great discussion today. We're going to talk about one of the fastest growing challenges in cybersecurity today, non-human identities and securing the non-human identities, and talk about how do we govern identities that never log in, how do we handle least privilege for AI agent identities, and building a strategy to secure non-human identities. Before we jump into the discussion, quick shout out to our host, 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗀 Catalyst. And we have a great panel lined up. Fareed, Sai, Ajay, if you could turn on your videos, we can jump into it. And talking about 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗀 Catalyst really quickly. 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗀 Catalyst is a cyber alliance for cybersecurity founders of Indian diaspora, with guidance, networks, and resources they need to thrive in the US. Have a great mission and vision to help drive cybersecurity. And if you want to follow 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗀 Catalyst, they have a number of events that they organize, one with alongside Black Hat, a couple of a couple of chapter meetings coming up, and webinars. And if you want to contact 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗀 Catalyst, that's their contact information at the bottom. We have a great panel lined up. I'm going to stop my screen share here so that we can all look at our panelists here. We have a great panel lined up for our discussion today. We have Ajay Wadhwa, who is CISO at State Compensation Insurance Fund, where he provides leadership, vision, and strategic direction for the company's cybersecurity program. Ajay has more than 3 decades of experience in IT, audit, compliance, privacy, and cybersecurity. Ajay, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, I think you covered it well. Have been working since 1987, 10 years back in India, 28 years in US. My core is IT, and then I moved on to audit, compliance, security. Currently from 9.5 years or 10 years, being the CISO for State Compensation Insurance Fund. We sell workers' comp insurance in California. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajay. Great to have you here. Next on our panel is 𝗂𝘁. He's co-founder and CTO of Identra. He's a former FireEye Distinguished Engineer with 35 plus granted US patents and over 15 years building enterprise threat and cloud detection systems. Sai.
Thanks for the introduction, Sai. I spent 15 years building and architecting detection and response system for identity threats. One thing which is keep coming everywhere, non-human identities are now the biggest attack surface, but nobody is watching them. That's what got me excited into this problem statement. So let's dig in. Yeah.
Thanks, Sai. And Fareed Charnia. Fareed is Principal IAM Security Enterprise Architect at Guardian Life. Previously, Fareed was a Principal Cybersecurity Engineer at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. Hi, Fareed.
Hello, everybody, and happy to join and have this discussion in China. And yes, I think that covers me. I'm in the IT field for almost 23 years, 17 years at MSK running the IAM program, and now at Guardian running the strategy and IAM program at Guardian.
Thank you, Fareed. Sai and Jay, thank you. Some housekeeping items for the audience members. Please feel free to post your questions. We may cover some of the questions during the discussion or towards the end after the discussion. We'll have some time to cover that. During the discussion, we'll also run 2 or 3 polls to get your feedback, and that'll help us drive the conversation as well. Millie from the 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗀 team is helping us with running the polls in the background, and we'll coordinate your questions over to the panel as well. Now, panel, every agent, every API, every automated workload, just like 𝗂𝘁 was talking about, they all have an identity. So can you get us started on what are non-human identities, also known as NHI? What are the different types of NHI? And in the meantime, Millie, I'll ask you to get us started with a poll while we are discussing the NHIs. Go ahead. Who wants to take that first question?
Yeah, I'll kind of touch upon it, and certainly rest Fareed and Sai can chip in. Those identities which kind of are not supposed to be used by human. Machine to machine talk, like API keys, OAuth tokens, service accounts, those are mainly the non-human identity. The biggest challenge I see is people don't even know the definition of NHI, and they don't know what all NHIs are in their working in their companies. So asset inventory of the non-HI, NHI is the biggest challenge. With that, I'll
Yeah.
hand it over to Farida or Sai to add
No,
something
I'll
more.
Very
add
well
it to
covered.
yeah, I can go ahead.
Go ahead, Farid.
I would say, yeah, that's a good definition as well. And my definition is any digital credential, right, which is assigned to a software, tools, or assets that allows them to authenticate and then access your corporate resources, right, without any human intervention. So we call it in MSK, we used to call it non-interactive accounts, and so NHIs are any non-interactive accounts. And to your point, it could be those machine-to-machine identities or any automation wherever you use it, right? Whether it's your API keys, you mentioned about service accounts, OAuth tokens, your AI agents now, which is the biggest problem, right? Because NHI has been there for a very long time. And I'm sure we had a strategy at MSK as well. We used to have NHIs, we've laid down NHIs. But what made me more interesting and what's making more interesting that we all hear today is the non-deterministic nature of the agentic AIs, right? The AI agents. And that's why we also interested on the NHI. So go ahead.
Yeah,
As
very
we
well
saw
covered.
in the poll, sorry, Sai, just really quickly to contextualize that, as I just saw from the audience poll that about 88% of folks say they either have partial visibility and significant gaps or have blind spots that they are aware of. So sorry, go ahead, Sai.
Yeah, like I think very well covered by Ajay and Farid. My simple definition is any identity that is not a person is a non-human identity, right? And right now, around 68% incident involve non-human identity. And after seeing the poll, it's kind of like surprising that nobody has the complete inventory. I think the reason is simple, why people don't have that inventory. Should I go into that, Sai? Yeah.
Please, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and also, how do you, if you don't have a great inventory, how do you discover identities? How do companies want to go ahead and discover identities that they don't know exist? And what does an inventory look like? Go ahead.
Yeah. So as I said, right, it's surprising, but reason is very simple. For human identity, we have the onboarding process, right? Anytime any human comes in, there's a proper onboarding process. But when machine identity comes in, there's no process in place. Sometimes developer creates it, sometimes pipeline creates it, sometimes cloud infrastructure creates it, and now AI agents are creating it, right? So that's why kind of like it's all over the place. It's in your IDP, SaaS, browser, endpoint. That's one of the reasons of lack of inventory in this space.
And unless you have the inventory, how are you going to have control over it?
Right.
Yep.
And I think the main reason I keep saying that is we had NHIs from very beginning, right? It has been with every single organization. It has not been at the level, the risk at the level we are right now. And I think that's what is worrying people. And very plainly, the reason is because of these AI agents and this non-deterministic nature of the AI, right? And the scale at which the AI is growing. Those are the two main reasons I feel that we are all at risk, because if there's a deterministic nature of the non-human entities, we know exactly what access they have. We know exactly what they're accessing. We can and we know what the risk level is, right? The maximum, what's the radius blast. But that for a non-deterministic non-human identity, that is based on the reach of the non-human identity, right? So and that is where the problem is right now. And that's why I think we are more focused and more at risk, and we have to take decision right now to make sure that we have proper strategy and processes in place to control these NHIs.
And we have a quick comment from the audience as well. Most discussion about NHI tends to focus on IT-based systems and applications. However, OT, operational technology, has their own set of non-human identities, whether they're service accounts or keys and secrets, that sort of thing. And for companies that have extensive operation technology, and afraid you might be very well aware of it in the healthcare world, that increases the attack surface because now you have IT and OT.
Correct.
So go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, as Ajay mentioned, you can't protect what you can't see. And now with the AI agent, Farid very well captured that it's more amplified. AI agents are dynamic, non-deterministic, getting created and killed at machine speed. So the system who you build around it need to take care of all these amplified problems.
Now, do most of you, and this might be a good discussion, do most of you think of tying every non-human identity back to a human owner? How do you ensure that accountability?
Somebody need to own it. And humans are the best to keep track of it and delete them when they are not required or when they are of no use. I have seen in multiple organizations service accounts, they don't delete because they have a fear that it will break something in the process or some kind of a cron job or any automated job which is running. So certainly this is the challenge. We have to keep track of like the other assets which we keep track of. With that, yeah, I let others
I
start.
think we've had challenges with that in the past as well, with orphaned service accounts as an example, when the human being that was supposed to be the owner for those, when they're no longer with that organization. And 𝗪𝗠, you had something to add, I thought.
Yeah, I think as Farid mentioned, there need to be a human associated with any NHI found within the organization. But the problem, right, can't be one team, right, who take care of all that, because NHIs are created in different departments. But at a enterprise level, security team need to enforce the rule, right? That anytime any new NHI created, it has a owner, it has a expiration date, and the purpose is defined for that NHI. I think if these three things are in place, there's a lot more better accountability for NHI as compared to, as you mentioned, if somebody leaves, nobody take care of it, it becomes orphaned. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna put up our next poll in a second or two. But go ahead, Farid, you were saying something.
So my take on is first do the inventory, right, and make sure that, and I think Sai also mentioned earlier, like make sure you look at your identity providers, right, your IDPs, your Oktas, your Entra IDs, your pings. Make sure that you look at those areas for your non-human identities. Then look at your cloud infrastructures, right? Your AWSs, your Google Clouds, and then also look at the your files for your applications, your developer code repos such as GitHub or DevOps, right? And then also your hard-coded tokens, right, which are basically in your files or variables, expired certificates that are embedded within your code or CI/CD pipelines. First, inventory all those, right? Once you capture all that, then what you need to really do is ask question to yourself, right? What applications is using it, right? What credentials does these non-NHIs hold, right? What resources is it authorized to access, right? And who owns it from a human standpoint? Now, if you ask me, how do you discover NHIs? I mean, how do you discover NHIs you don't exist, and what does your inventory strategy look like, right? So once you've analyzed these you've done this inventory on these NHIs, you need to also ask questions as, how many NHIs exist in your organization, right? Because once you have the inventory, that's where you can start understanding what's your inventory looks like. Then who owns them? Like you all said, what permissions do they have? I would even go down and categorize these NHIs and say, hey, service account, workload entities, AI agents, you need to it's not just good enough to say, hey, these are the NHI agents. You need to categorize them. You need to even classify these service accounts, these NHIs with risk. These are privileged, non-privileged. Are they being actively used? Are these credentials being rotated? What was the last time that they rotated? And build a identity lifecycle management behind these NHIs, right? So if you have all these things in place, this is a basic thing I would do if I had to start my strategy on inventorying and managing these NHIs. That's a basic thing we all should do.
So you want to chime in? I know we're going to put up the results of our poll. Obviously, most people, there are a lot of people who are concerned about AI agentic identities with overly broad permissions.
Fried captured it, like start counting it, discovering it, build the inventory, right? The very next thing is to figure out, because many of the organization will be surprised by the number when they start discovering these, right?
Exactly.
And in the very first question will be how to prioritize. The prioritization should be based on the blast radius as well as the permissions and privileges assigned to those NHIs. So the one which are the most risky should be the one which need to be taken care first. And if credentials are not rotated, right, and they are long-lived tokens, those are the one which need to be taken care. But as we earlier mentioned, right, AI agents are happening at a machine speed. So many of these things, right, bookkeeping might not help. So people or organization need to start thinking more toward just in-time access or a very scoped access, so that these agents only do what they are permitted to do, rather than kind of like going all over the place.
Yeah, no, I agree with Sai on that one. But I think what this inventory would help you is give you a lens on what does your NHIs look like in your organization? What risk are you facing? Because I think Sai said it earlier, right? What you can see, how can you manage what you can see, right? So that inventory, I agree to Sai that this is going to happen on the scale and speed that we have not imagined so far. But unless you don't have an inventory of those information, you do not know what you're managing. You don't know what your risk exposure looks like. And then once you identify and categorize these non-human identities, you know exactly where to focus based on the risk. So that's what would be helpful. But I agree with Sai that things are coming at the scale and speed that nobody have imagined that I've seen.
Yeah, and I think in the past, when I guess before AI era, it was we had the luxury of having identities that may not have been governed really well to be okay, because they are maybe used internally only, or that sort of or on-prem. But with AI, especially with identities that are over permissioned, have way more permissions than they need, they might present a bigger blast radius. Do you feel?
You will see, Sai, that people have hard-coded passwords in their programs, in their scripts, and those are defunct account, orphaned account, but they are still alive. Somebody can certainly look at the script. It could be outsider, it could be insider, who may misuse that information.
It could be an AI agent that actually gets access to that file and be able to use those credentials to log into the system. This will happen, and that's where the problem is, right? Eventually, in the past, those files were there. Even humans would have had the access to it, would have not done it because they know, but AI agents would not do that. If it sees it and it sees that a human is asking for certain information, it'll try its best. That's the problem with AI. It will try its best to satisfy the owner's prompt. So that's where the problem lies right now.
Yeah, that's the non-deterministic nature of AI, right? It'll figure out a way to do it if it can.
Right.
So So how do you apply least privileges to especially in an AI world, in an AI agent world?
Well, we have the concept of zero trust.
Yeah.
We keep talking about it, but frankly speaking, implementing that is a bigger thing. And when you talk about an organization which is 5,000, 10,000 people, it's really brings the challenge. So a true zero trust access control, you should give only access what is required. That's can be a good start.
Yeah,
Certainly inventory, and then the second step is this.
I think we'll add a couple to your point, Ajay. Like least privilege, right? Assume that you know what an identity gonna do.
Exactly.
But AI agent break that assumption left and right. You can't
Exactly.
even predict their next move. So with the standing access, if that agent got a prompt injection, it can do whatever it want to, right? Ultimately, now attacker is telling him what to do rather than the actual system. Yeah, please go
Yeah,
ahead.
this is one of the fundamental challenge in the modern identity security, right? I feel like I've started from square one. I thought I was in this IAM field for almost 18 years, but I think I went to IdentityVerse and I realized I'm starting from scratch. And the reason is because of these fundamentals that we talked about, least privileged, right? That doesn't stand with AI identities anymore. Why? Because in traditional least privileges, we know exactly what resources the identity would have access to. We know exactly what action they will perform, right? We know what data they have access to, what the impact of this the compromise looks like. But with AI agents, because the behavior that depends on what prompts the person has put in, depends on what data the access that the AI agent has to, or what tools does it have availability to, right? And what reasoning path is following, what the future. So it's basically because of all these non-deterministic behavior, we cannot use the same least privilege. So I think Sai's question is, how do you apply these least privilege, right? So the least privilege becomes in AI world becomes least reachability. What I mean by that is minimize the reachable graph depth, right? Apply capabilities, boundaries, permission boundaries. What I mean by that is, if you have an AI identity, only allow that AI identity to access 3 APIs, all right? Only within this tenant, only in this network, only in this identity scope, and only in this time window. So that's the least privilege we need to go to, not the older way of doing it, right? Then continuous authorization verification. What I mean is, every action the AI agent takes, that authorization needs to be verified. And once that action is taken, it tries to do something else, that needs to be again re-verified. So it's not the old way, hey, I got this access token and now I'm good for the next 8 hours. No. That's not how it's going to work. You need every action needs to be verified, and that's what. And then another one is, we're talking about just-in-time access. What does that just-in-time access looks like with the AI world, right? Create short-lived tokens, right? Never let the identities have standing privileges. What I mean by that is, if an example, an AI identity needs a database access, right? A read request. It'll make a read request. The policy engine will verify the request, approve it. The access is only given for 5 minutes, and then it expires. So what happens is, even if this AI identity gets compromised in the future, it doesn't have any standing privileges. So it will still have to go through the whole verification process. So that's the other area we need to look at. Another thing is sandboxing, right? AI agents should be sandboxed in a particular container, read-only file system, no outbound internet, no shell, no secrets, limited memory. So that even if if this AI agent has hallucinates, technically it's bound to a certain control, right? And then policy-based and not intent-based. Now, what does that mean? And this is another thing I learned from the IdentityVerse. Policy-based, not intent-based. I used to worry, what does that mean? What that means is, basically, I'm the admin of an application. That doesn't mean that I can actually go and execute. I can reset passwords. For example, I'm an admin. I want to reset a password. I'm from a particular IT department, and I'm doing it with business hour. that's allowed. But if I'm an admin, because I'm an admin, I can't go and delete 50,000 accounts. If that happens, it's a high risk. You need human in the loop, and approval is required, even though I'm an admin. And like in traditional world, if I'm an admin, I can go and delete 50,000 accounts and nobody's going to ask me anything, because that's how the standing privileges are. But that doesn't fly with the AI identities. Again, human in the loop, regular entitlement reviews. Again, I think Sai said it well. With the scale this going to happen, your regular entitlement reviews are not going to play here. You will need some automated reviews. You need some automation in here, and you need the AI agents reviewing these accounts and then reviewing their entitlements. And then finally, giving the AI agent. One more thing I learned from Identityverse, if everybody would learn from this, is give your AI agent lesser permission than what the owner has, and do not give them permission to create identities or privilege escalations, because you need to keep that kill switch with you. And that was the biggest point I could take back, if you ask me, that make sure that the NHIs do not have higher access than the humans. And that's the least privileged.
Do you have anything that you want to add?
Føl went too much into the detail, and all the points are very well captured. I think with the standing access, AI agent is kind of like a confused deputy who is kind of acting at a machine speed, right? So the more you scope it out, just in time access, make sure it doesn't cross the boundaries. So right now what is happening, agents are communicating with other agent. Anytime that agent to agent communication happen, the delegation is blurred. So no context is there. So the more scoped out, and for any high severity action, there need to be human in the loop so that agent can't take those without the permission.
Yeah, especially I think we have some precedents in the cloud computing world, where in microservices, where each agent should have, and I think this goes to Føl, your point about intent-based versus policy-based, right? You want to have each agent that is scoped to have one identity, one purpose, and at the least amount of scope possible for it to do that particular job.
Sure.
And as opposed to a human being who, like in your example of the admin who has administrative access to 50,000 entities, they could delete him, but you rely on the human being's judgment not to do that. But you cannot rely on a non-deterministic AI agent not to do that. Ajay, you wanted to add something?
I just wanted to say NHI, non-human identity, was previously there. AI has just amplified the problem. So it is, and we are not talking any rocket science or new things. Asset inventory, giving least privileges, having control over your asset, what it is doing. This is kind of basics of cybersecurity or information security.
Yeah, we're going to queue up our last poll, but I want to pose this question to everybody here. So how do we, then we're talking about scaling our existing controls, existing entity and access control. How do we scale that, scale your NHI strategy in the AI agent world?
So, I mean, I think from scaling standpoint, right? I mean, I would say it's shared governance model, right? That's what I would follow, right? I think it's not a one department, one person, or a responsibility to implement NHIs, right? And to make sure those NHIs are properly managed within the organization. I mean, I feel that there's multiple departments that needs to play a role. The security owns the standards and policies, right? And they will and risk thresholds. And then your IAM team, right, that they're going to provide the platform, right, for automating, provisioning, deprovisioning, attestation, password rotations, and other controls to manage these identities, right? And then, of course, your DevOps, your platform engineering teams, whoever these, or application team, these are the technical owners. They're responsible for the usage and compliance of these accounts, and based on the organization standards and policies, right? So NHI security acts as a collaboration point between teams rather than a strict silo. That's my strategy.
Yeah, especially as you, Føl, had mentioned earlier, it has to be in a continuous governance model in terms of AI agents. We can't be just to enable it and have long-lived case. 𝗪𝘂𝗍, do you want to chime in on it?
Yeah, I think the secure path need to be simpler. Many times, like when developers or DevOps create these API keys, permissions, pipeline, they go with enabling all the permission because that's the faster path. So the more we can make the secure path more simpler, automated, that will kind of help the scale part of it. But at the same time, as Fareed mentioned, that it's a shared responsibility where security team enforce the policies and guardrails, and developer, DevOps, and pipeline team kind of like use the well practices. And other thing is right now, one thing I see in the organization, like secrets or these keys are copy pasted into the different places, like sometime in the Teams chat, sometime in the config, code base. So if pipeline can directly talk to secret manager and that handshake is more confidential rather than handing over by a human, that will be one way to secure it. Yeah.
And just so the results of our latest poll, and no one is saying that they are able to stop the sprawl of AI agents or the spinning up of AI, because the business is demanding, and not just business and the other engineering product, they're all demanding to use the benefits of using AI agents. So there's no stopping in front of that train. But at the same time, we all recognize the risks that we talked about of having ungoverned agent identities. Any comments about the results? So question for the panel again, sorry. If we, and traditionally, security has been quote unquote the keepers of making sure identities are governed. How do you incentivize the DevOps teams and the engineering teams to take ownership of governing identities, non-human identities especially?
Well, it's security is everybody's job. So, I mean, as part of my job profile, I'm not only the CISO. When I was actually on the IT side, I used to do proper documentation. I used to document so that somebody, if I'm not there, somebody else can take over. So again, getting back to the basic, we need to have the basics in place, and that should work. That will work. It is part of everybody's responsibility. Incentivizing, it's part of my job, which I have to do, whether I'm in DevOps or I'm in security. That's the best I can say.
Yeah, I would go with what Sai said, right? Keep it simple, right? You create those guardrails, create those technical controls in place. And as I mentioned, I feel that the IAM team, if any time now, has more responsibility to make sure that they have proper platform for proper automated provisioning, as I mentioned, deprovisioning, making sure they have proper password rotations, they have all the proper tools, and make it easy for this DevOps and engineering team, right, to be able to manage these non-human identities. Because what I see is in many organizations is if your processes are difficult, are tough, that's where the DevOps would say, hey, I don't want to waste my time doing this, right? I would rather just get my things done, because they also pressured to deliver at the same time. So they want to make things easy, and at the same time, we have to make sure that we have proper guardrails around that, right? And that guardrails is not, and of course, security is definitely a group effort, not a individual's responsibility. And to that point, if you have proper guardrails, and then we keep these DevOps or application owners responsible, right, for the usage and the compliance of these accounts based on organization policies, I think we should be good. That incentivize we're talking about is making sure that they are responsible for the usage and compliance. So if anything goes wrong, they will be pointed, they will be responsible for those those accounts. So if you keep those accountability for individuals that are using those accounts, they will be very careful as to how and where they use those accounts and what access. So indirectly, giving them accountability and responsibility is where I would go, but making sure that we put proper guardrails around that and making sure we give them proper controls. And as Sai said, keep it simple so that they can also follow those and easily.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Embedding, go ahead, Sai.
No, I think lighting on the same part only, like developer don't go to the secure path because it's slower, right? The more simpler, straightforward it is, they will automatically adopt it, right? Other part is like along with inventory, there need to also be detection and response baked into it. Many of those things are simpler when it comes to non-human identity because humans are unpredictable. They can do any action, but machine tokens are majority of the time predictable. They come from the same location. They call same actions. Keeping aside AI agents for now because they're non-deterministic, but talking about NHIs, legacy NHIs, it's very straightforward. So that audit trail and monitoring also need to be in place and properly followed. Yeah, go ahead, Sai. Yeah.
No, I agree. Baking the guardrails into the fabric of the everyday task and to the framework, that's critical, especially, like embedding security requirements into developer tooling, or secret walls and, identity federation, so that, like, I think both everybody's been saying, so that the secure behavior is the path of least resistance. It's the one that is the easiest path to do it. Maybe using policy as code to enforce non-human identity standards at the pipeline level, or maybe treating NHI credentials like production infrastructure, right? And you have to version them, manage them, govern them, and have it audited and owned by team. And I know we spoke about accountability, ហ្�րիդ, you were talking about. So that goes without saying that we need to make sure the actions are auditable and you can trace those actions and accountability back to whichever agent performed this. We have a question about a confused deputy problem where someone with a lower privilege could trick an agent into performing agent that may have higher privileges to taking actions that were not intended. And I know we were earlier talking, both Sai and ហ្�րիդ, you were talking about where an agent could go outside of the intended intent of the agent itself because it just has the permissions to it.
Absolutely. I think least privilege, as we said, right, and not the least privilege of the traditional way, the new way of least privilege. The least reachable path is what I would call it. Least reachable path. Look at the graph depth. Make sure we have proper boxing. Make sure we have, no standing privileges. And we follow those. Then technically, in this example, if a deputy has access, that would not fly in here because technically, first thing is they will not have a standing privileges, which means every time if they're trying to access and do certain things, like you said, the policy verification engine will verify that policy and say, okay, is this person able to do this based on intent, like you mentioned, right? So all that, and then also even if it does give the access, it'll be only for a short period of time. So technically, it'll be blocked. And as we all said, that's why I said when I went to this identityverse, I feel like I'm starting from scratch because all the controls, and I think Sai talked about monitoring tools and everything, it's all changing and it's all different and there's a lot to learn. I'm holding on this monitoring and then those configuration drifts and all. I'm holding on those conversations because those are big conversations and we won't be able to finish within an hour's time. So I'm going to stick to the inventory and make sure that we have proper processes in place for now. But of course, a further discussion to have on those configuration drifting and monitoring, and that's a whole different topic too to talk about in the AI world.
Yeah. One point to add to this, like the legacy NHIs, right? They were always one-to-one mapping, one NHI, one system. When things comes to AI agent, it's one-to-many. That one single agent not only have access to your AWS, it can also access your Microsoft 365, Jira, Confluence, and it's now becoming one click. You go to connector, add it, OAuth token, now they're connected. There's no just in time, and majority of the time they are getting delegated access. If global admin is using that agent, then agent is also having the global admin role. So I think proper guardrail and just in time is the way to go. But at the same time, there need to be both policies and intent combination hybrid approach, where if something going south, there should be system which says, oh, it need to be blocked right away and don't wait for anything. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if agents are ephemeral or identities are ephemeral, there will be agents that may spawn additional identities of their own. So again, sandboxing their ability to launch another agent or another identity with higher privileges, you have to basically sandbox it.
So that goes to my last point I mentioned about, make sure that the AI agents do not have privileges more than the human, and do not have the credentials to create accounts or escalate privileges, right? That principle would take care of those privilege escalations and creation of the identities.
Yeah.
One last question. I know we're close. Go ahead, Ajay.
No, I was just adding the closing comment. That's where the human in the loop comes into picture. That's where the concept need to be verified in the sandbox or your test environment, and then implemented, and then constant kind of check on and balances should be put in place.
Right. And also this human in the loop, right? We talk about human in the loop. My concern with that is also that with the scale and the speed at which this will be executing, would that even be possible, right? Or would we need an AI agent, an agentic solution to be able to detect that drift and be able to pull the kill switch based on the rogue agents, right? We were talking about good agents, good bots, bad bots. We were talking about that, how to identify those bots based on the intent. So there is a whole topic on that as well, like good bot, bad bots. And I think intent is definitely the key to holding, understanding, and differentiating between a good bot and a bad bot, and be able to pull that kill switch with an automated process.
And one of the questions was, so we need runtime authorization that includes all the guardrails that we were talking about. And I think the answer is yes, we're all agreeing to that. Yep. And I know we spoke about agents that will have access to multiple systems. And it's a whole different topic, but talking about cross-functional access or cross-organizational or NHIs that have cross-organizational boundaries, third-party SaaS applications or supply chain integrations or partner APIs. And that increases exponentially the blast radius. So I know we're coming up on time. Go ahead, Sai. I was going to throw it to the panelists for your closing remarks or takeaways for our audience.
Yeah, no, just was saying like 68% of the breaches are now based on NHIs. And this system-to-system communication, like multi-system, that's where amplifying it, the sales loft drift, where one organization got impacted because of that, 1,000 organization got impacted due to the same reason. So,
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Farid. Go ahead.
No, sorry. Go ahead. I will hold.
No, my point was stick to the basic.
Exactly.
Stick to the basic, and work on that. You will be able to you will be successful. I mean, these challenges will always be there, and that's why we have the job.
True.
So over to you. Go ahead, Farid.
My today's takeaway, 6 takeaways. First of all, visibility. You can protect what you can't see, right? Treat your NHIs as first-class identities, which means every identity should have an owner attached to it. Discover all these NHIs. We talked about it. What areas you should be looking at? You should be looking at your IDPs, making sure you look at all the different DevOps, all code repo. We talked about all those areas. Make sure you discover all those NHIs. Categorize those NHIs, right? Non-human ID basically is that service account, is that an app registration, is that a AI agent, and classify that as AI agent, right? And then maintain ownership records and flag anything without an active owner, because every account should have an owner attached to it. Attach risk to these identities, example, privilege, non-privilege. Make sure so that you can identify your risk once you get the inventory done. And then create and track NHI identity lifecycle. Very key, because that's how you would know if there is an identity drift, because if there is multiple accounts NHIs being created, that's the way the monitoring would trigger. If you have a good lifecycle management, if you see that multiple passwords being reset, or there's a lot of failures when in authentication, you'll know all that if you have a proper NHI identity lifecycle in place. And of course, monitoring and we talked about. So yes.
Pai, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, start counting, start discovering, build the inventory, figure out all the risky one, and make sure anything which need to be eliminated, it need to be eliminated. Don't stick those around, because those are the ticking bomb. If you don't know what it does, figure out the owner, figure out, and anything, not start creating new debt. Anything newly being created, make sure it has owner, it has expiration, and it has a defined purpose to it. I think these three things will simplify. But there's a lot to go in terms of NHIs. I've shared one article which goes a lot more deeper into it. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. This is an evolving field, and there's a lot all of us can learn. And as we go along, as Ajay you said a couple times, it's all about going back to the basics, apply. But it's applying this at machine speed, like Sai and Fareed, you guys were talking about. So thank you so much for a great discussion today. It was really informative, and thanks to the audience for your questions as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great
Take
weekend,
care.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice.
Right.